Welcome to The Microscopists, a bite-sized bio podcast, hosted by Peter O'Toole, sponsored by Zeiss Microscopy. Today on The Microscopists,
I'm joined by Kelly Vere, who reminds us there's more than one way to go about getting a degree.
I kind of thought, okay, I think I need to go and get a degree to be able to give me a foundation for a future career. I think that was the case, certainly in the late 90s, but I couldn't necessarily afford to go to university in the traditional sense. So I just looked for any job. I didn't mind what it was, as long as it would pay for me to get a degree part-time.
She explains the initiatives that she set up to get the contributions of technicians in education internationally recognised.
I thought it would be amazing if I could get 5 universities to sign this thing, for the launch. But we actually launched the technician commitment at the second UK Higher Education Technician Summit, which we held in Warwick in 2017. And we launched with 36 founding signatories, which was just amazing. And that was in the May, and then by the September of the same year, I think we were up to over 70 signatories.
And how she would have become an astronaut were it not for getting dreadful seasickness.
Problem is, I do get really seasick, so I'd probably really struggle, wouldn't I? There's those test things you have to do where, it'd probably be useless, to be honest.
All in this episode of The Microscopists. Hi, welcome to The Microscopists. I'm Peter O'Toole, and today I'm joined by Kelly Vere, MBE from the University of Nottingham and the UK Institute of Technical Skills and Strategy, and we have a lot to describe today. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Pete. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, Kelly. Thank you for agreeing to this. Do you know what? You might be the first MBE that I've actually done. What is, for the international audience, an MBE?
Oh gosh, okay, so it's an award, I guess, made by the Crown. So it means you're a member of the Order of the British Empire. It was a huge surprise and a big shock when I was awarded that.
And who awarded you the MBE?
You mean in person at the investiture? So the letter, I was really lucky because the original letter, it was signed off by Her Majesty the Queen, so it was really lovely. And then in person, the investiture was Prince William, which was a delight, I have to say, a real delight.
So that's a really mega achievement. So I think we can say you're a high flyer, very successful in your career.
I'm going to get really uncomfortable using things like that, but thank you, that's really kind.
Okay, well, you're an inspiration to many, and we'll come to that later on. And actually, so Kelly's been involved in really the career progressions, the environments of many researchers, and has been instrumental in some significant changes throughout UK academia and now going wider into the international environment, which we'll discuss in more detail later. But firstly, I want to dig back and find out, when you were a young child, can you remember what the earliest job you ever fancied doing?
I can remember it really clearly. I wanted to be an astronaut. Desperately wanted to be an astronaut.
What happened?
Never quite got there, hey? Never quite got there.
Yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I fancy it as much now, but yeah, I did back as a young girl. I did, yeah, for sure.
So what inspired you? What was? Do you remember a trigger of why you were so into space and wanted to be an astronaut?
My dad and I had always had a shared passion for sort of human spaceflight, like the Apollo missions and things like that. So I think there was a shared sort of passion there with my father. And then I remember Helen Sharman, who was the first Briton of space, obviously a woman in STEM as well, which was amazing. So I guess her as well. Yeah, I still am. And actually my son now is really into that type of thing, which is exciting. So I get to share that with him and my dad now, which is lovely.
How old's your son?
16 now. 16.
Does he still want to be an astronaut?
A pilot. So who knows, eh?
Okay.
Yeah.
So from wanting to be an astronaut, which is I don't know what degree you do to be an astronaut. I guess that could be almost anything, couldn't it? What was your first degree in?
Well, my first degree was in biomedical sciences, but I guess I did that in a slightly unconventional way at the time.
Go on.
So I did really well in my GCSEs at school. I was a bright kid. If I'm honest, I probably didn't have to work too hard. I was all right. I had a natural affinity for exams. Then I went to college and did my A-levels. I didn't do so great in my A-levels. I think I thought, quite arrogantly, I guess, on reflection, that I could just get great grades without having to do much because I could do exams. But that wasn't the case at all. So I did pass my A-levels, but nowhere near with the grades that I would have hoped to get. And that was a huge shock. But I think one of the most important things for me, actually, individually, to go through, to realize that actually it didn't always come that easily. I wanted to go to university, and I could still go to university with the grades I got, but I guess I couldn't afford to go to university in the sort of traditional sense that as most people access university. That just wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
So I thought back at that time, I think we're talking like 1999 now, so yeah, late 90s, the loans had come in instead of the grants for tuition fees and so forth. So it was a very different time. And I kind of thought, okay, I think I need to go and get a degree to be able to give me a foundation for a future career. I think that was the case, certainly in the late 90s, but I couldn't necessarily afford to go to university in the traditional sense. So I just looked for any job. I didn't mind what it was, as long as it would pay for me to get a degree part-time. And I stumbled across an advertisement in the local paper for a junior medical technician at the University of Nottingham. And so applied for that role. And to my amazement, got that role because my A-levels weren't in science, actually. So yeah, I'm still to this day not quite sure how I managed it, but I was really fortunate to work with a research group where the head of the research group funded my tuition fees for a part-time degree in biomedical sciences at Sheffield Hallam University.
What role were you fulfilling at that point?
I was a junior medical technician in the division of immunology, so a research technician, essentially.
Okay, and so what were your A-levels in?
Gosh, business studies, psychology, and communication studies. So I have to say, Pete, it was really hard to go from a GCSE in biology to a BSc honours in biomedical science, without the A-level bridge.
Yeah.
So I found that super tough. And of course, I was literally driving up the M1 to a lecture in Sheffield and then driving back to work. So it wasn't the traditional student experience that you potentially would wish for.
Like I said, I didn't do A-level biology.
Did you not?
No. Caught up very quickly in a degree in biochemistry. That was kind of a crash course in A-level biology in the first year.
Yeah, I found it really, really tough. But I guess it did give me a work ethic, particularly, after I'd had that shock to the system of not doing quite so well as I'd have liked to in my A-levels.
No, but yeah, my A-levels were also poor. They weren't great. But you get that imposter syndrome, and I think I'm competitive, so that, kicked me back into. I learned how to learn at university. I don't think I ever properly learned how to learn before that.
Mm-hmm.
I think schools now are very different, I think. Far more focused on teaching how to learn as well, which is good. So from that degree, what happened next?
Gosh, okay, so I guess whilst it was hard work, it was really beneficial to be working full-time and gaining a degree part-time because I guess I had that work experience alongside full-time students on my course whose degree actually took the same time as mine, but they had a sandwich year, with the sandwich year degrees.
Yeah.
So I completed my degree at the same time as my fellow students, but I guess because I'd built up so much experience, or 4 years worth of experience as a technician at the University of Nottingham, it put me in a strong position to apply for a more senior role. And that's when I actually moved into imaging. I went to work in confocal microscopy actually at the age of 24, I think.
And where was that? Was that at Nottingham?
Yeah, that was at the University of Nottingham as well, in the medical school.
So what was your first confocal?
Oh gosh, you're testing my memory now. I think it was a Leica SB2, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, you must be. Come on, you always remember your first confocal.
I don't know. Maybe it's my age, but my memory is not what it was.
So that's sort of through your degree side and everything else. And I take it you're enjoying the technical role, supporting, using the confocal microscope. But you've moved over from that. So you've now gone over to be kind of internationally leading, championing technical skills. I don't know. What's the best way to describe it? You'll be far better at describing this than I am.
It's a tricky. It's somewhat of a mystery for me, to be honest, Pete, in some ways. I guess when I first became a junior medical technician, I was just 18, I was fresh out of A-levels. I arrived at this university, I'd never stepped foot on a university campus before. I guess as a naive 18-year-old, I thought universities were full of professors and students. I didn't realise there were these whole, amazing people who really make science, innovation, research and education happen. So that was quite amazing to me, and it became very apparent that technical staff were vital to the university's mission. However, I soon realised that, I guess, beyond the immediate research group, when you looked to the wider department or school or faculty or university, and then even the sector as a whole, as technicians, our profession, right, didn't really experience strong visibility or recognition or the same career development opportunities that our academic colleagues had. And I can remember that realization really starkly. As I advanced sort of my career as a technician, so I became a senior research technician, I was working in a core facility, as I've mentioned, I became an institute laboratory manager. One of the opportunities that came up was a scholarship from HEFCE to study a part-time master's in higher education. So I applied for that. It wasn't clear if technicians were eligible or not. And I applied for that as a way to, I guess, build some insights, knowledge and understanding as to the technical role in higher education, because there was a real paucity of literature and strategic understanding of what technicians do in universities and research institutes. And I guess that, if you like, ended up being a bit of a springboard to becoming what I would describe as an accidental advocate for the technical profession. After I wrote my master's dissertation on the role of university technicians, I was invited to, first thing that happened was I wrote a piece for Times Higher Education, an article called Firm Footing. I didn't think they would publish it. I was absolutely amazed when they published it, and they paid me. I couldn't believe it. But I guess by doing that, I accidentally put my head above the parapet. So, I had this rallying call for how, we absolutely needed to support technical staff and recognise and invest in this crucial, workforce. And then it spiralled.
So interesting. So you got the article out in Times Higher Education. How passionate were you about the needs at that time? Was it just kind of an academic exercise? You put it into Times Higher Education. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I'll write it. How actually, because now obviously you're very passionate about it. Were you as passionate about the roles of technical staff and their development back then as you are now? Or is that matured as you realised a bigger picture?
No, absolutely as passionate back then. Absolutely. When you're living it and breathing it and walking the walk every day, of course you're passionate about it, absolutely. And actually that decision to publish in Times Higher was a very deliberate one. I remember talking to my dissertation supervisor about a potential academic article that could come out of the dissertation. And I kind of felt really strongly, well, no one, with the greatest respect, not many people would have looked at that and read it. And actually there was a real need to do something for the technical profession. And I felt that, a news sort of magazine or something would be more widely read and therefore potentially might help do something for us.
Which it has, because I know where it's got, obviously quite close to the project. But what were the next step? Who approached you did you approach someone and to try and drive it forward and actually make something happen? Or were you approached to help make something happen?
Gosh, Pete, I've got to try and reflect on what happened really. So the article came out and then I was invited to give a keynote lecture at a conference, a half-an-hour lecture. I am really frightened of public speaking, even to this day. It's just not something that I'm naturally comfortable with.
And yet you're very good when you're publicly speaking.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. But I do get really, really nervous about public speaking. And I can remember being asked to do this talk and thinking, I can't do that. I'm just too terrified to do that. But realising that I couldn't argue in a national publication that we needed to give technicians voice and visibility and then be given that voice and visibility and say, oh, no, thank you. So I knew I had to step out of my comfort zone and do that. I did that talk and left that day with 6 more invitations to go and speak at different organisations. And it sort of spiraled. And around that time, I was sort of looking at what else wasn't or was available for technical staff nationally. And something that was missing, I felt, was a national conference for technical staff working in higher education and research. And so I made one up and we hosted it at the University of Nottingham in 2015. And I can remember really clearly having a conversation with someone in the comms team here at the university. And this was a national conference for technicians across the UK. But they said, oh, don't call it a conference, call it a summit. Because if you call it a summit, how people will get behind a summit, it sounds much grander. And so we created the UK Higher Education Technicians Summit, which is now known as HETS. And, you know, that's got a life of its own now, which is wonderful. It's a big professional development and networking event for technical staff in higher education and research, which takes place every 2 years. Off the back of that, I should say, alongside the summit, we created something called the Papin Prizes. I felt really strongly about that. There was no sort of national award scheme for technicians, so created one. And we were delighted because, you know, we awarded them at the first Higher Education Technicians Summit. And I think over 250 technicians across the UK were nominated, which was just amazing, you know, to see colleagues get that recognition and see how great they felt when they saw, you know, that someone had taken the time to put a nomination in. It was just wonderful. Off the back of that, the Science Council approached me about working with them, particularly around the theme of professional registration in the first instance. So, yeah.
So, you say 2015 for that conference. Just think about how short the time frame is to achieve so much, from the article to the talks to the conference to the, I guess, the technicians' commitment then led on from that.
It did. So I joined the Science Council on a part-time secondment, so an external secondment, and originally they were looking to see how they could promote professional registration to the technical community. So professional registration, as you know, Pete, is when you can get your chartered scientist or your chartered engineer, for example, status. But the Science Council had recently introduced 2 new levels of registration, which sit just below chartered status, which I guess for the first time created a pathway for colleagues to, you know, go on that sort of chartership journey. So technicians could apply to be registered science technicians, for example, or registered engineering technicians. And I know there was work underway in other sort of subject disciplines as well. But, you know, ultimately technical staff can be chartered scientists and engineers, and we have a number of those in place now. However, when I was working with the Science Council on that piece, you know, it was immediately apparent again that universities just don't have neat ways of speaking to them about technical staff. Not one person has responsibility for technical staff, so it's very hard for external organisations to come to a university and say, "Oh, we want to talk about how we can invest in or develop your technical staff," because no one has that portfolio. And so that got me thinking that we needed something that created, I guess, a bit of a pledge or coupled with a person or a figurehead for individual institutions to really get behind. And that's where the idea for the technician commitment came from.
It also explains why Simon Breeden, who was at York at the time, suddenly became responsible for every technician on campus. Pretty much through that. Because obviously a lot of universities became signatories of the technicians' commitment to really show that they're engaged in the development of the careers for their technical staff throughout the university, and not just of the sciences. And that's worth to get. It's across the board. And, you know, microscopists, as this is the microscopists, are just a very small niche part of a much bigger picture. And actually, I think York, through Debbie Smith, I think it was one of the first signatories on that when everyone put ink to pen to paper. Is that the right word to use?
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is super cool.
Yeah, so essentially, you're quite right. The technician commitment is a pledge that we ask universities and research institutes originally across the UK to make. And by signing the technician commitment, they are pledging activity against 4 key pillars that impact their technical staff. So their visibility, recognition, career development, and sustainability. And by sustainability, we mean sort of, you know, the sustainability of the skills, the technical skills in the organisation. I thought it would be amazing if I could get 5 universities to sign this thing, you know, for the launch. But we actually launched the technician commitment at the 2nd UK Higher Education Technicians Summit, which we held in Warwick in 2017. And we launched with 36 founding signatories, which was just amazing. And that was in the May. And then by the September of the same year, I think we were up to over 70 signatories. And now the technician commitment stands at over 117 signatory universities, research institutes, and supporting organisations. As you know, the Royal Microscopical Society are one of our supporters.
Yep. And not just the UK.
No, so to be honest, when I launched the technician commitment, we got quite a lot of interest internationally immediately, with institutions internationally wanting to sign the commitment and get on board. And I just felt that we had to proceed with caution on that, not because I didn't want to go on a world tour or go global or anything like that. Of course not. Of course, we want to share good practice. But at that point, we didn't have that good practice, and felt that we needed to prove that this model, this framework could work and deliver real impact for institutions and for the technical staff within them. Not just go on, a world tour straight away, as nice as it would have been. But
I remember talking to you about making it international and driving faster, and you were like, slow down, but you could see the movements that were happening within the Europe. So core technologies for life sciences, for example, that was bringing out, and there was a risk of a lot of duplication of efforts, when actually there was a pretty perfect exemplar through the technicians' commitment that was there on the peg, that they could just take off the peg and run with and take it out, which I think is what's now been happening, because you've got institutes in Germany, is that right, that have signed up? Australia?
Not yet, but Australia. So you're absolutely right. The technical commitment, the beauty of the commitment is its simplicity, really. It's a common framework, which you're absolutely right, we can use internationally. Our first international signatory, the University of Sydney, we worked with them quite carefully, actually, to ensure that we could give them the support that they needed to, learn from the best practice from institutions across the UK and buddy up, if you like. So that's been really exciting. And then we also have the Welcome programme in Malawi. Sorry, brain fog there. But in Malawi, which is excellent. So that's the Liverpool Welcome programme over there, which has become our second international signatory, which is really exciting.
So I think it's still quite an influence. It's had a massive influence, and still a lot of growth potential within it. I'm going to just skip for a moment, and we'll come back to the Institute for Technical Skills and Talent, and how TSN, how all these things fit together, because it becomes more and more complex as you go through. But throughout all of this, you've got a son. Is it just one child you got? One son?
No, I've got two.
Two?
I've got one son and one daughter.
And how old are they?
Now they're 16 and 13. So two teenagers in the house.
So at the start of this, they'd have been 6 and 3, or even younger at that point.
Mm-hmm.
How did you balance bringing up your children through to and doing so much? How did you keep the energy, the passion, the drive? How did you actually balance that work-life side of things? Because that can't have been easy.
No, I guess it wasn't. And if I'm absolutely honest, I probably haven't got my work-life balance always particularly right, if that makes sense. Obviously, my children are my priority first and foremost, but I think it's really important they see me go to work and be passionate about the job I do and try and make some change in my tiny little part of the world, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I'm also really lucky. I've got an incredibly, supportive family. My parents are hands-on with their grandchildren when they were small, and still continue to be, which is really lovely. So great people around me too.
Tiny part of the world. How many technicians just in the UK?
Well, that's an interesting question, because it depends on how you define a technician. But we estimate around 45,000 at least, with a number of grey areas around that way.
That's just your little part role. The influencing, and 45,000 people, you probably had a positive impact for a large portion.
Oh, I hope so. Because that's why we do what we do, isn't it? What's been really lovely about the kids is that they've been able to get involved a little bit with some of my work along the way. So that's been really nice. So one example of that is we worked with Gatsby on a new technician gallery at the Science Museum in London. I think you're familiar with that, aren't you, Pete? That project. This is something that showcases technician careers across all sectors and disciplines to 12 to 16-year-olds. But when we launched the gallery, so the year before it opened, the Science Museum realised that they didn't have a kid who was between 12 and 16 years old to sort of talk about it. And so my son Lewis came and gave a speech at the sort of press gathering for the launch of the Science Museum Gallery, all about, which he wrote himself, all about how technicians were vital really to society. And of course he took the angle of what was he then, 13, 14-year-old lad. So he was talking about, how they when he's had a blood test, it's technicians who analyse the results. When he's on his PlayStation, it's technicians who build the games and so forth. But it was kind of nice that I've been able to sort of intertwine that a little bit.
So you've been hopefully an influence to them and probably one of their inspirations as they get older. And I think when they look back, it's very hard for children when they grow up with that around them. They don't realise just how big an impact you've probably had. I think when they get older, they'll find that really inspiring. Who've been your inspirations?
Gosh.
In life, sort of in work, out of work, whichever way, who have been your influences?
My parents, definitely. And that's probably an obvious one to say, but it's a true one. They're proper grafters. We crack on and we get stuff done, and that, the work ethic I think they've instilled in me has been huge. And they still work hard now. They're supposed to be retired, but they're struggling with that.
How proud are they of it? Do they realise your impact? They must do. You got an MBE, so that for them, they must be so chuffed.
Don't get me wrong. I have a sister as well, and my mum and dad are incredibly proud of me and Michelle. Absolutely. If I'm honest, they probably didn't completely have an idea of what I did for a job, and I think it is quite hard when you work in institutions like ours, isn't it, to describe what you do on a day-to-day basis. They knew I worked on technicians and so forth, but they didn't probably quite understand. And I think the MBE was a big shock to them. I rang them and I was quite emotional about it. It was in lockdown, so I couldn't go and see them when my letter came, you see.
I know.
I don't think that's the news they thought I was going to tell them.
Mum, Dad, I've got another child on the way.
That's what they thought. I was like, no, not now. But it was lovely because it was lockdown, we actually had to wait a year for the investiture. But whilst they couldn't come into Windsor Castle with me, they came down to Windsor with the kids, and it was a special day for sure.
So I think it's really nice. So they've been your inspiration, but they can see the success that's brought. Yeah. And if they listen to this podcast, hopefully they realise you're influencing 45,000 people or more, and that global influence throughout it. This all sounds great, but there must have been difficult or challenging times throughout the career. What's been the most challenging time or difficult time you've had to face?
Putting me on the spot now, Pete. I don't think I'd single out one single challenging time. I think it's hard to juggle everything, isn't it? I want them to feel like you're doing a good job in all areas of your life. So as well as obviously having the children and the job and so forth, and wanting to do the best for the colleagues that you work with and are advocating for, essentially, I was still keen to progress my studies. So after the Masters, I took on an Ed.D., so a part-time doctorate in education, to continue my research into technical skills, roles and careers in higher education. That ended up taking me 9 years to complete Pete, because it was just so hard to juggle everything, and it was so hard to fit everything into the day. So there were some really challenging moments then.
How did you stay motivated through that?
Sorry?
How did you stay motivated over 9 years?
Well, I guess if you're passionate about something, and actually my practice and I guess my academic study were very heavily intertwined, which is the beauty of a professional doctorate like an MD. Actually, you're researching your own practice, so I guess that's how you stay. So that was tricky, and I guess there's there'll be just little nuggets of examples of where ultimately I've been trying to advocate for a community who traditionally have, as I mentioned, have experienced a lack of visibility and recognition, and sometimes the research culture for people in that community isn't always positive. So I've had a few negative comments thrown my way, along the journey, and that can be pretty hard to dust yourself down from.
Are these negative comments from senior academics or people very senior within the university environment, or are these from actually technicians themselves, or both?
I'd say a mixture, Pete, to be honest, a mixture. But I must stress, I'm incredibly well supported here at the University of Nottingham. It's there's just individual comments. I think I've been told to get back in my box on occasion because I'm just a technician. I had a postdoctoral researcher tell me once, when she learned that I was a technician, that she wouldn't wipe her shoes on someone the likes of me where she came from. Just little barbed comments along the way, because I guess you're trying to do something different, aren't you? And when you try to do something different, that can make people feel uncomfortable. But I guess those sort of things really just strengthen your resolve to make a change for the better for the community you're from. So
yeah, so just the thought of someone saying, that she wouldn't wipe her shoes with it, it's just in any world that's almost that's unacceptable language, really, isn't it?
I think she was trying to almost like, she was from she wasn't from the institution that I work at. She was from a different institution with very hierarchical structures where the postdoc was here and the technician was here. And I think when she first joined the team, she'd assumed I was a postdoc like her. And when she learned I was a technician, that was, whoa, I'm here, you're here. And that's just one example, I guess, of sometimes the negative cultures that technicians do very sadly operate in. I think it's changed much for the better. And that's a massive aim of the technician commitment, to improve, the culture and environment for all colleagues who contribute to the research ecosystem.
Yeah, I guess so similar. I guess I fell into more technical roles without realizing it. Yeah. I guess, and I will champion York because they've just been exceptionally good. Certainly for the technology facility and progressing the careers, supporting the careers, and the staff within it have been really quite amazing. I'm not sure that's the same everywhere across campus, but certainly within that facility, I don't think there's ever been that them and us. It's always been an us, as in we're just together, I think. And I think that's even got even better over the years. And I guess they just see us as extensions to their labs at that point, because we're part of their team for all those bits of work. And I think that's really important. I think we spoke about this with some of the other, like with Stefan de Jong and stuff in other meetings, Alison North and Kurt Anderson, talking about these type of roles within it. Thinking of these types of roles, I'm involved with Core Technologies for Life Sciences, which is, I guess, technical provision of high-end technology for life sciences. We've got the Technical Specialist Network here in the UK, which is for, I guess, more technology-orientated technical staff across the sciences and arts and humanities, so across all disciplines. But it's still a sort of a subset of all technical services. You've got the talent stuff down in the Midlands innovation area. And then we've got the Institute of Technical Skills and Strategy. Oh my God, how do all these fit together?
Do you want me to walk you through it?
Go on, please.
Okay. So the technician commitment, as we've already talked about, launched in 2017. And I guess what that did was really create an environment where, as a sector, we had more recognition of the challenges and opportunities for the technical community. What the technician commitment did by creating that environment is provide an opportunity to apply to funding bodies for work to design, innovative interventions to try and address some of those challenges that we'd identified through the commitment, and collectively as a sector we're looking to address. So the first bid that I wrote to Research England was the talent programme, as you mentioned. So that was an award just under £5 million made to the Midlands Innovation Universities.
How much?
4.9 million.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Is that your first grant?
As a principal investigator, yes.
Okay. That's impressive. Okay.
But again, it's great, isn't it? Because, and Research England was so supportive in that, as a technician, they felt it was appropriate that I led that, seeing as though it was a project about technical staff. So, yeah, really important. Apologies, I can see my calendar things popping up there. Hopefully they're not coming up on your screen as well, Pete.
No, it's fine.
So £4.9 million from talent, which was great for a project to pilot new initiatives in the Midlands, but to also generate strategic insight and knowledge nationally. So the project absolutely had national reach, as well as, trialling some particular interventions around learning, development and culture change in the Midlands. The big sort of strategic piece through talent was the Talent Commission, which we published in 2022. And for this is something I wanted to do for a long time, but we were able to pull together an amazing team of commissioners, all types of backgrounds. So we had vice chancellors, we had representatives from funding bodies, we had technicians, quite rightly, representatives from industry, professional bodies, learning societies, and so forth. And those colleagues worked together for a period of 20 months to develop a report for the sector, which really provided some, essential foundational knowledge and strategic insights into the technical workforce in UK higher education and research. That made 16 recommendations to the sector and to different parts of the sector. Recommendation number 16 was that we needed a more permanent entity to build on the work of the technician commitment and the talent project. And the suggestion from the Commission was that should be an entity, working title, UK Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy. That led us to then write another bid to Research England, and we were awarded £5.5 million last year to establish the new UK Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy. The new institute is the home now of the technician commitment. So previously, the Science Council had hosted the commitment on behalf of the sector. It's now moved to the Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy. The Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy also hosts the UK Technology Specialists Network, which you and I know well.
So I'm just thinking, if I go back, you were seconded to do some of this work in the very early stages. Are you now full-time on this?
Right. So I was seconded initially to the Science Council to work around professional registration, and then to that evolved into the technician commitment, which is about much broader things than just professional registration. So professional registration is obviously crucial. Now, my role at Nottingham is I'm Director of Technical Strategy for the university. We have a team of just over 700 technical staff here at the university. So that's my day job, if you like. And then I also lead the UK Institute for Technical Skills and Strategy, the Technician Commitment, and the Talent Programme as part of that.
Which is your other full-time job.
Yeah, it's good though. It keeps it interesting, right?
How do you juggle your priorities between those two roles? And this is an interesting point, actually. My roles with the RMS, TSN, CTLS, you've got to balance that with the day job. And I've always taken it that anything I do on the charity side, there's always benefits to the day job, but the job that actually pays my salary. But how do you actually, because you're leading it and it needs real leadership to drive it forward, how do you balance that?
Do you know what a really steep learning curve for me was? At the beginning of all of this, it was just me. The technician commitment was one person in the beginning. And actually now at the Institute, I think on headcount, we have a headcount of around 45 colleagues working across different projects, including talent and the technician commitment. And I guess that recognition that you can't do it all yourself was a steep learning curve for me. And I'm just so privileged that, I work with wonderful people who are all really passionate about this, and as a team, we can deliver so much more than just me on my own, for sure.
How good are you delegating now then?
I'm getting a lot better. I have to. No, a lot better. And do you know what? It's more about, I think I was better when I reframed it in my head as it actually being about giving people opportunities, in their careers, rather than me feeling like I was passing on a job, that was a burden to them. It's been wonderful to be able to give colleagues opportunities to really progress and try new things.
So we looked at challenging times and to where you got to today with it. What about what's been the favourite time of your career to date? If you could go back and relive a year of your career, when would it be?
That's a really hard one, Pete. A really hard one.
You're not allowed to say next year.
No. Okay. What would I say? There was a good year. I mean, I loved being a technician. I'm not at the bench now, but I did love being a technician. I remember getting my first authored scientific paper. That was a special moment. So I'm picking out moments rather than a whole year.
Mm-hmm. No, that's okay.
One of the projects I'm most proud of, actually, is something called the Herschel Programme. Are you familiar with that, Pete? You probably are.
Yeah, not very well versed though.
Yeah, so I guess I'd always felt, so I worked in science and engineering as a technician, and I always felt that, particularly when I was working in optical engineering, I was frequently the only woman in the room. I definitely felt that. Well supported by, colleagues, but often, the lone female in the room. And I always thought, there's something we need to do about this, for sure. was lucky enough to work with a team here at Nottingham to secure some EPSRC funding a few years ago for a project called the STEM Change. And that was looking at EDI across the STEM workforce. But my particular part of that was, dedicated, unsurprisingly, to EDI in the technical community. And we did some, very robust evidence-based research that, and published a sector report in partnership with the technician commitment that showed, amongst many other EDI challenges, that we had a real lack of women technical leaders and managers in the technical workforce in UK higher education and research. And I feel really strongly that it's one thing to report something, but actually you should do something about those sort of things that you're, reporting on. And so fortunately, with the talent funding, we were able to create a new programme for women, and we called it the Herschel Programme for Women in Technical Leadership. And whilst talent was to pilot things in the Midlands, with Herschel, I felt the problem was so severe that we should go national with it straight away. And so with the team in talent, we built, a really robust 6-month programme, leadership and development programme, but bespokely for women in technical roles or who were aspiring to be leaders or managers in the technical space. I thought we might get 50 women want to do the course. The first cohort ran at over 200 women. It was amazing. And I can't tell you the energy that we have we have a 1-day conference at the end of the 6-month programme, and the energy and the atmosphere in that room is just phenomenal. And we're actually on our 3rd cohort of the Herschel programme now. We've been lucky to secure additional funding from UKRI to keep that going. And by July this year, over 750 of my women technical colleagues across the UK will have finished that programme, which is just fab. So that's a favourite part of my job, definitely.
And I again, it's just another solid impact, isn't it? Wow, if you had a sort of set of achievements, and so these aren't just reporting. You say you've got so many achievements. It's unbelievable. I'm going to Anyway, so we asked you. You mentioned how you miss being at the bench, or you like being at the bench, but that's obviously migrated away from that, as it often does. If you could do any job outside of science, what job would it be? Just as a taster for a day, a week, a month. What would you like to do?
Astronaut.
Do you not feel the risks are too high now?
Would I do it now?
Where would the technicians be if something went wrong? Could you do that? If we sat you in that space rocket?
The problem is I do get really seasick, so I'd probably really struggle, wouldn't I? There's those like test things you have to do where it'd probably be useless, to be honest, but wouldn't it just be fabulous to have that view back down there? It's amazing, isn't it?
Well, if anyone's listening that's got one of those tickets to go up into space, yeah, I've got a volunteer that well deserving of getting up there. Kelly, I'll ask you some quick fire questions.
Okay, let's go.
Are you an early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
I know that one. PC or Mac?
Mac.
McDonald's or Burger King?
McDonald's.
What's your favourite thing? Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Chicken or beef?
Chicken.
With chicken sandwich or nuggets?
Chicken sandwich.
Yeah. Is that your go-to then?
Yeah, lunchtime. I love a chicken sandwich. Yeah, absolutely. You know my real go-to, Pete.
We'll get there. Tea or coffee?
Tea. I wish I liked coffee. I love the smell, and I'm sure I would benefit hugely from some coffee in my life, but I just don't like the taste.
That's okay. Beer or wine?
Wine, never beer.
Red or white?
I love both, but I'd go for white if given the choice.
Sauvignon Blanc or anything else?
Blanc, but only if it's New Zealand.
Oh, I didn't realise you're so particular on the New Zealand side.
Yeah.
Okay. Chocolate or cheese?
Chocolate.
Milk or dark?
Milk.
Oh. Cadbury's or other?
Cadbury's.
Good Midlander. For those on the international audience, Cadbury's chocolate is made in the Midlands. Actually, not far from where I was brought up. What is your favourite food? If you were to be taken out on a conference or something else, what would be the best thing they could put in front of you? What would be just like,
Do you know what I love? Do you know what I love doing if it was that sort of scenario? I love going for tapas. You know, like the social aspect of sharing a meal with friends or colleagues. I love that. So I go tapas. A little bit of everything.
Okay. So now you've got all the tapas. What is the one tapas you really wouldn't want to have put in front of you? What is your worst food, your nightmare food?
Shellfish.
Yeah, you can be shellfish. Just tell me what it is, though. Oh,
I'm not a seafood fan, Pete. I'm not a seafood fan.
it's okay. TV or book?
Book.
Ooh, reading anything at the moment?
Yeah, I am actually. One of my team, was really kind, bought me a book. I think it's called The Apollo Murders. So it's like a murder mystery, but based on the moon. So I'm not very far into it yet, but yeah.
I'm just getting a sense that, there's never going to be many people on the moon, so it's only going to be one of 3 people, isn't it?
More than 3 people have been to the moon.
Well, if one's died, that leaves 2. That's not really. They call that a murder mystery.
I'm not far into it, but I thought that was really kind.
Do you have any TV vices? Any trash TV that you like to chill out to?
I really enjoyed watching The Crown, actually, particularly the first season. That was really fascinating. Yeah.
That's not quite so trashy. Maybe it went a bit that way, but that's not bad. That's respectable, isn't it? I think. What about your favourite film?
I love Apollo 13. Which is probably not a surprise to you, is it, given that I've gone on about space quite a bit. I love Apollo 13. I bet everybody says Shawshank Redemption. I love that.
No, I don't think so. I think maybe one person said Shawshank Redemption in all the episodes. Yeah. So no, I think Apollo 13 is also a first. That's good. Star Trek or Star Wars then?
Neither.
Am I? You don't like either of them?
I've not seen them.
You've not seen them?
No. Oh, actually, I might have seen one Star Wars film, the one with the romance in it.
Oh, don't ask me. I don't watch Star Wars.
Yeah, I've not seen.
Much better.
I don't know them, Pete. Don't know them.
I watched 1, 2, and 3 when I was a child, and it never really grabbed me. But Star Trek, oh no.
No, I think my dad is in Star Trek actually, but no, I'm neither. I'm not really a massive science fiction person, despite the book I'm reading.
Yeah, no. I'd go with that. Just Star Trek. I just think that there's a bit of reality to Star Trek. I think it's not too far fetched.
Okay, I'll have a look.
I'm saying that. I'll just open myself up to loads of criticism for saying that, so I'm not going to say that at all. It's not quite true. What about your favourite Christmas film?
Oh, what's the one? It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah.
Okay. And favourite colour?
Depends on what it is. Like, I like bright colours, but if I was buying clothes, I'd probably go for more earthy colours. So it depends what the context is, Pete.
Yeah, you see, you said you were a microscopist earlier on. The answer should have been GFP or Alexa 488 or rhodamine or DAPI.
Absolutely.
And you come up with what you would wear. Oh.
Nothing wrong with that.
So where do you see the technical skills and strategy that the Institute is now up and running? Mm-hmm. Where do you see, what's the next biggest challenge? What's the big hurdle to overcome?
Okay, so I think I'm confident that we can demonstrate that the commitment, the talent programme, all the institutions that have engaged with those have really started to deliver progress and impact, but we need to embed some of that progress and impact more widely across the sector. So I guess some of the examples I'm thinking of are the research technical professional pathways that we've seen launch at a couple of universities here in the UK. So Liverpool, Warwick, Nottingham are working on that as well as a few others. So that's wonderful. So it's a promotional pathway for technical specialists all the way up to professorial equivalents. We've seen institutions here in the UK give technical specialist professor of practice titles, which is, I've been a technician 25 years this year, Pete, and I never thought I'd see that in my career. It's been wonderful to see those pathways continue to be innovated, but we need to sort of spread them, embed them more widely. I guess another example of impact that we're really pleased about is some of the work we've been doing with UKRI, and that is around specific calls, for example, for research technical professionals to apply for funding. So we've had the recent call by EPSLC. You do a lot of work with BBSLC, don't you? Which is, incredibly inclusive of technical staff now. But I think there's work to go with some of the other funders. So I think there's some work to do there. We have to
MRC are there as well. MRC you've got.
MRC, absolutely. No, I've been doing some work with MRC lately as well, and I know AHRC. Not forgetting our technical colleagues in the arts and humanities. They've been doing some great work as well. So I think there's a lot more to do, not necessarily with the UKRI funding bodies, but with some of the other funders to be truly inclusive of technical staff in that space. And I guess a big hurdle for me that's upcoming is we've had 3 years worth of money to establish the institute, but I need to ensure that this institute continues beyond that funding period. So sustainability of the institute is a key thing.
What are you saying? How is there a sustainable model where universities put in funds to be members of it, or other institutes pay a membership fee, which in the current financial climate could be really hard? Or do you think it's going to have to be going back to the government and getting more funding, grant funding for it?
I think it will be a mixed funding approach, to be honest, Pete. I mean, we're still in the early days of working out what that's going to look like. But for example, we have a research sort of a policy centre here at the Institute. So you can see there could be grant funding, there could be commissioned work. I think there'll be some consultancy. We have a number of flagship leadership courses, which at the minute are free to access, but further down the line may have to incur a charge. We wouldn't like to do that, but it might be a way of ensuring that we can continue to deliver the quality of provision for the community. So there's a number of things being considered.
I think it's a very good point, because thinking about as Liverpool and what they've set up and put through, and credit to all the Liverpool team there, rolling that out at other universities and trying to recreate the wheel seems a waste. And actually, I wonder if there's a plot role to be played there that someone could go in and actually help the institute just to adopt.
No, there is. We are launching a new technical pathways lab here at the Institute, which is exactly that, supporting institutions to implement those pathways.
So I think that would be, that again generates the revenue to offset it. Of all the conferences and meetings, what's your favourite conference?
My favourite conference? Is this a trick question? Am I supposed to say? I'm trying to think, what conferences have you organised, Pete, that I've been at?
No.
Oh, I love it's just wonderful, isn't it? I love going to conferences and meeting people and, getting to talk about the great work the team are doing and see colleagues. I don't think I could pick out a single favourite. I'm very much looking forward to TSN. We're hosting the Technology Network Specialist Network Conference, aren't we, in Bath in April? And I love, as I've already mentioned, the Herschel conference that we have. Then, of course, the Summit, the Higher Education, Summit. There's too many to choose from, Pete. That's a hard question.
Okay, so throughout all of these, and it's not just the conferences, you also get invited to talk at lots of different meetings, to universities, to institutes, at other meetings that are not necessarily direct on it. How much time do you spend travelling?
Quite a bit. And I guess, as this work takes on an increasingly international sort of profile, I'd imagine that might ramp up a little bit more. But I spend quite a lot of time in London, especially working with the Gatsby Foundation, who've been a tremendous supporter of this work, working with the Science Council and so forth, with organisations like the Royal Society and the Royal Society of Chemistry and the Institute of Physics. So I spend quite a bit of time on trains.
And but also, I imagine a lot of nights in hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you've got children.
Mm-hmm.
Do they ever complain?
No, I think they get it. I try and minimise it as much, so it doesn't impact them as much as I can. And actually, I'm giving a conference talk in Sweden in June, this year. And actually, my son will have just finished his GCSE, so he's coming with me. He's gonna go. So it's kind of nice, that we can do that sort of stuff together.
That'll be kind of cool. Take him up there, Sweden, and then he's got to listen to you.
Yeah, he has to just sit quietly at the back.
And I think we're nearly up to the hour. So I'm going to ask, is there anything that you regret, that you go back and wish, if you could go back, would you change? Are there any regrets throughout your career?
I don't think regrets as such, because I'm not really a regrets type of person. I think we should look forward, not backward. I guess the one example we discussed at the beginning of this conversation was, I really regret not working harder for my A levels. But actually, if I hadn't got the results that I've got, that probably wouldn't have instilled the work ethic that led me to do other different things. So no, I'm not really regrets type of person.
I did wonder if you'd pick out your A levels, and no, I surely that was probably the best thing that could have happened.
It was,
because that's what's kicked everything off, and that was kind of I guess the point of crystallization, wasn't it? And that's where everything's grown from, was those A levels. How much did you enjoy your time doing A levels?
I probably should have spent my time doing the A levels more than I did discovering nightclubs and boys.
So you enjoyed yourself a lot during that. So I asked you what the most fun time of your career. It might have been the A levels, but you're absolutely right not to regret it, because look what it's done, and shows what you can do, even if you fail at one point. Well, not fail, but you know what I mean, not get to it. That can be the inspiration to go forward. Have you ever written a grant and got it rejected? That's a shake of the head saying no.
I know, but I'm super lucky. I'm super lucky. I'm sure I will at some point very soon. But no, I've been incredibly fortunate.
I've just submitted one, writing another 2. Can you write my other 2 for me?
I don't think I'm a lucky charm, Pete.
I think it shows the content, the topic that you're going for had a very high degree of novelty at the time. Yeah. And I'm not even going to say right place, right time, because I don't think the time was there. I think you created the right time. I don't think people were shouting out for it any louder than they were 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But you made that time point.
I think that's really kind. But I think, to be fair, what also happened was, all this work sort of crystallized at a time where, Ottilie came in as chief exec of UKRI, and she'd done a lot of work on research culture and being inclusive of all roles and the ecosystem, so that chimed well, I think, with the direction of the funding bodies at the time. But I think there was a little bit about it being the right time too. But thank you, Pete.
And Ottilie obviously was one of my go-tos at York early in my career, and was very influential. And actually, I think she was one, and her and Debbie Smith both encouraged me to write my first grant application, even though I was not a classic academic. And they said, no, you should lead it. Before, it was front and center that you can write applications. They said, no, it makes sense. And we were successful with that. That's for a scanning electron microscope, a Joel 6490. See, I remember my microscopes.
I remember mine, I think.
But my success rate isn't as good. It's respect.
You'll have written a lot more than me, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I wish I hadn't. Some of them, when you send it off, you got. Sometimes they sing, sometimes they don't.
See, that's the way of it, though, isn't it? That's what makes it interesting.
It is, but that is up to the hour. I haven't even asked you if you've got any hobbies. So, I'm going to ask finally in the last minute. Do you have any hobbies?
Love theatre. Love dinner with friends. Papa. Reading. Fine wine. Yeah.
As long as it's a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
As long as it's a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, we're all good.
So I'm going to say thank you to everyone who's watched or listened, and please do subscribe. And actually, Ottilie does talk about the technician's commitment in her recording, which was a couple of years ago. So go back, listen to those. There's also plenty of other examples throughout it. But Kelly, you've been a massive influence, huge influence on so many people's careers. And I have seen at other universities people's jobs change and be recognised for what they're doing, that I don't think would otherwise have happened if it hadn't been around that time point and those movements. And so I don't know if you realise just how big an impact you're having and will have going forward. And on behalf of all the community, thank you very much. And thank you for joining the Microscopists today.
Thanks, Pete. Good to see you.
Thank you for listening to the Microscopists, a bite-sized bio podcast sponsored by Zeiss Microscopy. To view all audio and video recordings from this series, please visit bitesizebio.com/the-microscopists.